I'd like to call this first meeting of the Climate Culture Committee to order. We will begin this meeting with a roll call, starting with Ms. Blitzstein.
Mia Blitzstein, present.
Charles Burdell Williams, present.
Caroline Watts, present.
Jenny Lumen, present.
Robin Murphy, present.
Leah Mulhern, present.
Ross Whiting, present. Okay, we have a fairly short presentation for you tonight in the first Climate and Culture Committee meeting, and it will lay out how we are going to run these meetings and what we expect to do with this committee moving forward. Transparently, I do think it's very likely that this will change over time, and it should change over time because the intent with this committee is to be responsive to the needs of climate culture, both from the district's point of view to communicate about climate culture and what is happening across the district, and for us to better engage the community in discussions and growth-oriented activities related to climate and culture across the district. And so I'm just going to frame out how climate culture will run. Thank you to everybody who will be here. This will be an entirely different meeting from a public participation standpoint. So if you are interested in commenting, there will be moments for that, and it'll be different than any other meeting we've done. And in the future, we anticipate inviting more of the public to join us from UPG, from CAAA, from SEEK, so that we can hear more about what is happening and what people's priorities are related to climate and culture across the district. So thank you for coming to this first meeting of climate and culture. I'm going to move the mouse thing. So I've never had this much power in the climate in any committee, so I'm pretty excited. All right. So why are we here? We are here to explicitly discuss and drive towards positive climate and culture in all of our schools and classrooms across the district. Every environment that students exist, we want to foster positive climate culture. That is the reason we have created this committee. And so the general goals are now to share information with the public. And so we expect in the future, the administration will bring information about specific about specific programs that might be happening, about system-wide approaches across the district, to be talking about specific data across the district. But the intent is really to share information that the public is interested in and that we are interested in as board members as well. It's also to explicitly describe climate and culture strengths and challenges. And so we as a board will engage in those discussions. I will be asking members of the public to engage in those discussions with us as well, and to develop climate and culture areas of focus and goals. I think in general, those things are later pieces of work that we will engage in as we talk through climate and culture across the district. This is a select committee, and so I will just highlight, I'm chairing this, I will be chairing all of these committee meetings. Mr. Burdell Williams, Dr. Watts, and Ms. Blitzstein have been appointed to the select committee and will be present at all of the ones they are capable of being present at. But I also want to thank our board members who are not part of the select committee and who have decided to join us for this first Climate Culture Committee meeting. We really appreciate you being here. You're welcome at any of them anytime. In this committee, there will be no votes on any official business other than acceptance of the minutes, the opening and closing of the meetings, those types of things. Other than that, the purpose of the Climate and Culture Committee is for information sharing and goal setting in general. So that's for all of us together. The committee, the 4 select members of the committee who are to my right here, will meet individually as a group before the next October 27th meeting, where we will talk more explicitly about what our goals are for the Climate and Culture Committee and share those in the next meeting, and also engage in some generative discussion related to climate and culture moving forward. So there will definitely be some issues. Oh, that's perfect. Look, I said iterative, and there it is. Iterative and responsive. That is the intent with this committee. First, I anticipate 2 phases of each committee that we have. First will be structured information sharing and discussion. Sorry, this is 2 parts. Structured information sharing will be the first part, and discussion will be the second part of each committee meeting. And the intent with these committee meetings is to engage in some topic or piece of content, talk about it as a group, have the public weigh in on those things, and then have that discussion lead to the next committee meetings agenda and discussion points as they come up. That format may change over time, depending on kind of the goals that we establish as a group, what our priorities are, the things we want to focus on. But for now, that's where we're going to start. The focus of this committee is on goals, systems, and structures. The intent with this is not to establish hard line activities or specific goals. It's for us to all understand together what climate and culture we want as a district, and to understand where challenges and strengths are as a district, and to understand what our resources are, what our plans are related to climate and culture. So this is a big scope kind of discussion, not a specific discussion. And so we're talking about system level and school level programs, data, efforts, and actions. We're talking about system and structural level challenges, barriers, assets, needs, resources, and strengths. These are the larger kind of systemic view of climate and culture. And I also, my colleagues have heard me say this 1,000 times, want to make the implicit explicit. This is not a place to share individual or specific challenges. If you have an individual or specific challenge that speaks to a larger systemic climate and cultural challenge, I want to hear the systemic piece, the part that we have to chew on as a group, the part that we think about systemically as a school district in general. There are places and times for individual and systemic challenges. There are ways to get at us as a board, to email us about those things. You can email administrators about those things, and even individual teachers if there are challenges with those things. There are lots of ways we can address those as an administration and as a board, but this is not the place for those individual specific challenges. So the structure. The agenda will be jointly determined by the administration and the committee chair, with input from the board and based on what is happening from prior discussions. I will take notes during the meetings on everything that happens, and I will compile those notes. I will send them to my select committee members for them to review. And then in the next meeting, we will review that. We'll do a brief 5 to 10 minute, here's what we talked about last meeting, and here's how that lends to our discussion in the upcoming. This slide will appear in every committee meeting. It may change slightly, but I think framing out the way that we want to have discussions, because these discussions will be different than other committee meetings that we've had. It's important for us to think about the ways that we talk about these things in similar ways. And so first, I'm going to offer some framing. When we're talking about topics related to climate and culture, I'd like us to approach those conversations with curiosity. Curiosity is the non-judgmental desire to know more. It's the idea that you're asking, tell me more about that. Can you describe that more for me? If something is challenging, if there's a barrier we're talking about, it's unpacking it so we fully understand what it is without judgment. The second piece of that, and what I like to think of as the act of curiosity, is generosity. We all have the same goal. We want a positive climate and culture across every space our students and staff exist in this district. And keeping that in mind, we can have discussions where people have dissenting ideas, where people may have conflicting information that may not show the whole picture. And if we approach those conversations generously and curiously, we can come to a place where we understand and respect each other's positions better. And that is our goal with this committee. You can also expect active moderation. I will moderate discussions. Engagement will focus solely on agenda topics related to climate and culture. So when we create an agenda here, we will keep focused on those topics. There are places for open public comment in legislative meetings, and I welcome anybody who wants to talk about any topic that's not on an agenda here to come to a legislative meeting and talk about it. There's spaces for that. This is for us to engage in concerted discussions related to climate and culture that build on one another. I am also open transparently to suggestions for agenda items for my select committee members, for my other board members. I'm open to understanding what topics we want to chew on together. So feel free to let me know what you'd like to look at. We will look both forward and backward. The intent today, I think, is mainly to look forward, to talk about the things that we want, to set a place where we're understanding what could be related to climate culture, and also understand together how we think about climate and culture. This is not intended to nail us down to any specific approach, but for us to have an open conversation to better understand from each other where we're coming from as a group. As part of that, avoid personal statements if you can. Like I said, we're going to try to avoid individual or specific examples if we can, mainly for two reasons. First, to focus on the systems aspect of this, and then also to protect student confidentiality. Because there are times in which we do not want to talk about specific incident or specific thing that happened in the district. When someone is responding to a prompt, I wanted to flag that this is the question that I'm going to keep in mind as I moderate these discussions. Does this comment or topic help us understand broader climate and culture issues and goals? Does it protect confidentiality? And does it move us towards constructive solutions as a group? As I am listening, if I hear something that does not meet that criteria, I will gently redirect the conversation, and I will suggest perhaps another format for those questions or a future meeting in which we can engage in larger conversations related to whatever the topic is. And so, before I move into the questions that I have for us to engage in tonight, there are only two of, and are fairly broad, I'd like to open it for questions about any of this or comment on any of what I have presented so far. As well.
This may be the next half of the discussion, and so I don't mean to be a smart aleck about this, but I was hoping that we could maybe talk a little bit about what we consider to be climate.
That's literally the next thing. Yep.
Okay.
Next here. Here, just
We are
this is-
looking forward.
Yes, that's right. You're looking forward. This is the next and last slide for the entire presentation. So now you've got a preview. Ms. Blitzy.
This is just like a nuts and bolts question.
Yeah.
Is October 27th the next meeting of this?
Yes, it meets every other month.
Every other month. Okay. Want to establish for the general public. How
Just explicitly, we have a superintendent who is here for 5 days. And so it is really important to me to give you lots of time. Yeah, well, I hope you do too. That's that. But we want to give them time. We want to give the administration time to figure out what their priorities are, what they want to present on. And so that's why October 27th will be the meat of the administration's
Sounds great.
engagement. Cool. Others? Got quiet in here.
There.
It went on. Other questions about this? The public? Any comments or questions? No. I'm gonna look online real quick. I think we have a lot of people online. We do. We have a hand online.
Yeah, someone just raised their hand. I'm gonna allow them to talk.
Yeah, it's Keisha. Hi. As soon as you're able to talk.
Good
Go ahead.
evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. And name and where you reside in the township, please.
Sure. Keisha Rodwell Green. I reside in Elkins Park.
Happy to have you.
Sure. Thank you, Ross, for your opening remarks and for the slides that you put together. My question is related to how the committee discussions will be tied back to the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan.
That is an excellent discussion. As a fan of making the implicit explicit, I think that when we present information, we will always be thinking about how does this tie to our larger goals as a group? And I think explicitly, as we move into a phase where we have a strategic plan that is new and has been reformed, we will be thinking about the kinds of climate and culture initiatives and systems that we need to build in order to meet those goals. And we can explicitly tie those things together. Dr. McGinley, does that sound right to you? Yes. Great. Is that helpful?
Yes, and then the second question is more of a yes or no. Would you be willing to have a measure of those metrics, or some way to measure or put in place metrics that are tied back to the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan?
Tying into school climate and culture?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so with the strategic plan or comprehensive plans as they exist, there are progress notes and indicators of success and measures of progress associated with each of those, with any of the plans that we have. So yes, we would be more than willing to bring information and evidence or data to the conversation to talk about, or progress notes to talk about where we stand around issues of concern on climate or issues of expectations on climate.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll also explicitly say, my practice is in research and evaluation, and so I will be looking for the ways that we can tie explicit school district data to our strategic plan goals. And Dr. McGinley is my contact for this. And so when we prep for this kind of meeting, I anticipate he and I having conversations about how we can make sure all of these metrics are aligned and our goals as a board are aligned across the district. I don't see any other hands online, but go ahead. I see one in person.
Kathy Sampson, I live in Cheltenham. When you guys come to these meetings and you're talking more about broad general topics and things like that, because climate and culture seems to be one of the biggest things, right? That we're talking about, and the biggest things that have been issues over the last year or not. When you're talking here, will you be able to take that information and implement anything that you talk about in a timely fashion or not? Like, I don't know if you take the things that you have here and then do you automatically implement them over the school district, or is it another process? I mean, because a lot of these things I feel like may need to be implemented sooner rather than later, because there are a few different things in different schools and safety issues, things like that.
Sure.
But things that you would be talking about, I suppose, at these meetings, would they be able to be implemented in a timely fashion? So some schools are thirsty for those things. They're very thirsty for something, some kind of help. You know what I mean?
So there are many things going on right now.
Oh, yeah.
I would expect to report on those at probably the next public meeting or September 8th to talk about, give some progress indicators as to what's occurred this summer, what kinds of training and events and changes in protocols for things. We have a long list, and I've actually been diving into all sorts of data that all ties. It's hard to think of something that happens in a school that doesn't contribute to climate or distract from climate. So I've been catching up on all sorts of things. So I wouldn't want you to think that this broader conversation is slowing down anything at all. There are indicators of need that the board has identified and that the board has initiated around some bigger policy issues and some of those sorts of things that are in the works. Then there are some things that the administration had taken on, certainly before my arrival. There's training that's gone on before my arrival, and we'll be able to summarize that. There's also data that's been reviewed and collected, and so we are in the process of doing many things that all connect back to climate.
Building on that too, when we had our prep meeting for this, we talked about presenting things that have happened or are happening, things that are in progress and are ready to be implemented, things that are in the planning phases. And so the intent is we have these three buckets, but there may be things, and I think there likely are, that may come up in these meetings that don't fit in those gaps. And that's why, or fill those gaps. And so that's why we're having this too. So we can get information and we can learn more about what needs to be filled, what gaps need to be filled. I think from the board's perspective too, our three areas of responsibility are curriculum, policy, budget. And so when I think about climate and culture in general, I'm going to be looking across those three areas to see if there are ways that the board can implement anything in each of those areas, a curricular focus related to climate and culture. Is there a policy we need to change that might influence climate and culture positively? Is there a budget item that we need, because budget is effort for the school district. And so is there a budget item we need to look at? We have a new dean of students at the high school. That reflects a budget effort for a change that we have focused on climate and culture. So there are definitely ways the board can look at climate and culture. I will say our process is slower because we have to go to committee meetings, we have to vote on things, but also those things are necessary for us to have a full picture of what is happening across the district and for the public to comment on those things as well. So while Dr. McGinley can implement things quickly if they are needed, our process will be deliberate and transparent and will happen in all these things. Helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? There's a red Q&A button. Awesome, Ms. Hesbacher. Thank you so much. Ms. Hesbacher, could you put in the question and answer just where you reside in the district as well? I'm aware you reside in the district, but for the record. Can you explain how the new climate and culture position at Cheltenham Elementary will tie their efforts to this committee's discussions? Is there an expectation to add similar roles in all schools? Is that one you want to table?
Sure. No,
Yeah.
I think we can answer that. I mean, there are certainly various indicators that there was a need for some additional supervision at Cheltenham Elementary before, during, and after school. And so the deployment of a climate and culture position at Cheltenham Elementary is intended to shore up other efforts at the school. There is no expectation to add that position in the other elementary schools. There are statistical indicators that, for example, suspension data or detention data and those sorts of things, that there were more issues of concern at Cheltenham Elementary School than there were at the other elementary schools. And so it was a strategic decision to add that position and to think about how that position supports the administration in operation of the school and provides supervision both before and after school, based on many concerns that have come up. But there is data to support that's the place to try this model. Working with Mr. White, we just this morning had a conversation about just even a check-in around the deployment of everybody, like September 21st is the date, but like just check in right away. How do we get started? What's working? What changes do we need? So we want to be strategic in using the resources that we have to ensure the safety and supervision of kids.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hesbacher. I'm going to look for other questions. No other hands. Any other questions in the room? Ms. Blitz.
This is not exactly a question per se, but just a comment in terms of the processes.
Yep.
Just thinking about how data leads to discussion, leads to planning, leads to action, and sort of like going around and around in this circle. Then we collect more data, and then we have more discussion, then we have planning, and then we have action. So just in terms of thinking about, like, I hear you saying, like, well, we're talking here and then what, right? Like, we don't want to just sit around talking and then have that not lead to anything, especially when we know that there are issues that need to be addressed before October 27th, let's just say.
Yeah.
But just thinking in a longer term sort of cycle about having a space where we're elevating issues to be in a public conversation where they weren't before, gives us an opportunity to see data that we may not have seen before, which gives us all an opportunity to discuss the data and then make new plans around the data that leads to action. So I know that sounds like that takes forever. But I do, like Dr. McGinley just said, they're not waiting on that to make change, but it's helpful as part of a public process. And I'm saying this sort of for all of us, me, myself included, to think about how this engages the public, our community at large in the conversation, and, you know, opens topics up for conversation that were just not, we didn't have a space for them before. So we had to create a space to make these conversations public. So just, I hope that sort of helps. It helps me to think about what we're doing here, that we're not just like having conversations to no end, but that starting with data leads to conversation, leads to planning, leads to action.
Thank you. Dr. Watts.
I think I see what you're saying, Ms. Glinstein. I think I would see this committee similarly, but slightly differently in a way of addressing your question. That I think first and foremost, having this committee means how seriously we are taking this as a foundational topic for the wellness of the district. If we're going to do well academically, if we're going to do well in that sphere, we've got to do well in climate and culture. And to me, we aren't the ones in this committee doing all of that work. This committee's function, I think, is to elevate what is happening, to make sure there's regular communication about it. Just like you said, Dr. McGinley, there's already work going on. Well, let's hear about that work. Let's ask about it. Let's talk about how those decisions were made and monitor it and make sure that there's just a steady spotlight on this as a foundational issue. And as we're taking actions, monitoring those actions, seeing if there's improvement. If there's not, then what happens? And it's a way for us to stay informed and also to share information, as we said earlier. And hopefully, as we get to a place where things are stronger and more stable, to not take that spotlight off, but be able to have more kinds of conversations that we want to be having about growth, wellness, proactive kinds of thinking that comes from what we're going to learn from a healing process. I think we have a lot to learn here. We've already learned a lot. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity, hearing more about what it is we are doing, what we should be doing, and what we want to be doing.
Thank you, Dr. Watts.
They had one, I think it kind of ties a lot, I think, together, is when we committed to starting this committee and restarting the communications committee back in May. And I think Dr. Whiting outlined a lot of the things that will be different about this committee than some of our other committees. And you've been to some of those committees, so you know kind of how those go. And I think there will be some level of that, administration comes and they say, this is what we've been working on. This is what we want to tell you about. This is what we're hoping to do. And then we'll be able to have some of these other deeper conversations. But what I'm excited about, besides all of that, is that now we have 5 of our committees, and we have a lot of committees, more than some boards do, but we are committed to those committees, is that right now, 5 of those committees line up exactly with the 5 pillars of the strategic plan, which I think kind of, we have a facilities and operation one that, it's kind of, they all line up, and now we have a committee where those climate and culture updates, whether they're from the strategic plan or otherwise, kind of have a natural place to live, even though we will sometimes also have holistic strategic plan updates. I'm glad that we have a place for those things to live as well. And that kind of answers something we talked about earlier as well.
Thank you, Ms. Paul.
And discussions of climate are going to go across all these committees.
Absolutely.
All policy and budget.
Yeah. They all intersect.
Yeah, go ahead. Name and where you reside in the district.
Ben Sampson, Ashburn Road.
Thanks, Ben.
What kind of data will be collected to determine climate health?
I think that, when you want to go ahead. It's
No,
I think it
I
depends. but-
I think that's a primary discussion for this community.
Yes.
There are traditional measures of climate, like simple things like student attendance and discipline data and those kinds of things. But what are the broader measures that show that families are welcome, students are engaged, and that there's a productive, vibrant instructional program in place? So there are lots of different ways we can measure that. There are lots of ways that the district could decide to collect data around issues that aren't in those traditional measures. I mean, I'm in the traditional measures because I'm used to looking at those data. But this committee may come up with other things that they would like to see measured from a parent perspective, from a parent engagement perspective, from a student engagement perspective. And so, the district has the capacity to measure climate in all different ways. And, previous district, one measure was the extent to which students are engaged in co-curricular or extracurricular activity. We did this map of, were students taking advantage and then who wasn't and why. And so, there are, depending on what we see as the priorities and what the board wishes to surface to the the highest level, then, we can create ways to collect data that are meaningful to the goals of the district, goals of the school.
Dr. Waltz.
Do you have suggestions?
I mean, he would have a lot of suggestions, but again, I don't know if that's exactly.
You know what? I think in the next conversation that we have on the next page, when we're talking about how to define climate culture, I imagine that you would be able to say, I think this is climate culture. I think this is climate
Or
culture.
this is how you would find out about.
Right. And I think that's directly relevant to our next conversation. That sound? We segue?
I think that he's there,
Yeah, no, totally.
right? So he's physically there. He may not be in every classroom, but he knows what goes on,
Yep.
right? So, and there's a lot of things about climate and culture that he could certainly express his feelings on or feel like something could be better. But we're trying to, be present.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate that.
To stay at the more overarching level, and then I'm really gonna let you get to the next.
Okay.
To address what Dr. McKinley said, there are more traditional ways of collecting data on climate culture, but other ways include student focus groups, for example, and that you cluster those groups across the microcultures in a building. That cultures are made up of other groupings, and some kids cross across many different kinds of groups and other kids stay within groups, and listening to a range of students from a range of groups and a range of identities and a range of experiences, I think would be a really valuable form of collecting data on climate and culture. The way I've done it.
Ms. Lohman.
All right, I'll get to let you get some things. I think one of the purposes that I see in this committee is sort of, as we're already talking, is we already collect a lot of data on climate and culture, however you define it, however you cut it. We are required to collect a lot of data by the state. Every school, local educational agency, so every school district, every school, every charter school, really pretty much any public educational entity from K to 12 has to every year submit a safe schools report to the Department of Education. So there's information on suspensions, expulsions, all kinds of information, attendance, all kinds of information that is collected and submitted and is available publicly right now as we speak. You can go on if you're so inclined and have insomnia and read the safe schools reports for every school in our district and neighboring districts, wherever. So that's a lot of information. It's actually that we collect, but we don't actually present in, I think, a very usable format. In fact, it's like never actually been presented to us really is in the 6 years that I've been on the board in a usable format, maybe once, I think, is that I can recall. So it's hard to build off of that because unless we as board members or public are going in and digging out information out of that report, it's really hard as a board member to like make recommendations or have thoughts even about sort of what should be going on. And so I think that's part of it is to sort of gather what we already have, present it in a usable format, have some discussion about what it means. I think also the other thing that we've not really done so is we've started some really good MTSS, multi-tiered system of support work in our buildings, including positive behavioral interventions and supports. And we get sort of bits and pieces of information about that, but we haven't sort of had full discussions about how those are impacting those measures like suspensions, expulsions, whatever it might be, in our buildings. And if they're improving climate and culture, or if there hasn't been much of a change, or whatever it might be. And so I think there's already a lot of that. We have belonging surveys that we do every year, for the past several years, I think. So we already have like a lot of information. We have information from all of the student groups that Dr. Scriven was meeting with, you know, the superintendent group, student groups. I don't feel as one board member that we are lacking in data. Maybe we are in some areas that I don't know about, but I feel like what we are lacking in is sort of the analysis of that data, providing that data in a publicly digestible format, and then making some decisions about what that data means and where to go from there, kind of. Which is why I'm excited about this committee, because I think we actually already have a lot of what we need to form the basis of some discussions.
Ms. Rodwell Green has a comment too. My understanding is that there was previously a role within CSD that was responsible for tracking data, and this role was eliminated. Is that the case? If so, is there a willingness by the board to reconsider implementing this role?
I don't know where the data folks are at the moment. I'd have to come back to that question. I don't want to answer that right now.
We will come back to it, Ms. Rodwell Green. Make sure you get the right answer, an accurate answer. Okay. So, bearing in mind that this is our first Climate and Culture Committee meeting and our first discussion related to climate and culture, these are our 2 questions for today. They are broad. They are intentionally broad. And so I'm going to ask for the framing of curiosity, generosity, and constructive discussion as we move forward. Would anybody like to share on what they think climate and culture is, and what does positive climate culture look like? Ms. Blitzstein is excited to share.
I am excited. As just a little bit of background before I share my response, or my initial response anyway, is that I coached in classrooms for 7 years, working with teachers on exactly this, positive climate and culture. And within that coaching position, we utilized a frame called the Power of 3, which really involves 3 main just areas of focus in terms of naming actions that indicate a positive climate and culture in a classroom. And those areas of focus were taking care of yourself, taking care of others, and taking care of your environment. And to me, when those things are happening, when all members are taking care of themselves, taking care of others, and taking care of the environment, it's the indicators are there in student success, in risk-taking, in achievement, and in confidence, and which are all the things to me that when I look at a student, any kid in any classroom, in any school, anywhere, that I want to see. I want to see a kid who feels safe, confident, and able to challenge themselves, able to take risks, and then able to succeed. And success looks different for every kid, but the environment that allows a kid to reach and to maybe make mistakes sometimes, because we are all human, we do that too, is in what people are focused on when they're taking care of themselves, taking care of others, and taking care of the environment. So that's kind of a roundabout way to say those are the criteria, I guess, that I'm looking for in our expectations, and then what the outcomes speak to in the data when those things are in place.
Ms. Blitzstein, thank you very much. I will also, just for framing, Ms. Blitzstein is literally an expert. She is an educator. She's been an educator her entire career. I do not expect Anybody can talk about climate and culture. And that is the intent. And so if there is something that you want to focus on and you don't have 25 years of experience in education, but I want to hear that too. That is important to me to understand what your conception of climate culture is. And also explicitly, I will not be taking board comments and questions and then public comments. I will just mix it up. So if there are hands, then I will take them anytime. Other comments? What is climate and culture, Mr. Burdell Williams?
Thank you. Climate to me is about experience, it's things that are tangible, things that exist in the literal sense. How does it feel to be in the school, right? Like what is the actual lived experience, right? Is it vibrant? Is it positive? Is it fun? What, like these are the things that I think of that come to mind when I'm thinking about climate, right? And to relate that to another more common phrase or common way that we use the word climate, we talk about things like hot, cold, rainy, humid, brisk, right? Like all of these things like exist in a physical sense. And I feel the same way about school climate, regardless of age group, regardless of whatever the subgroup, because there are many, right? But there is a specific climate. There's a number of questions for us to ask. I won't go exhaustively down some of that. I think we'll continue to synergize around it, and I think they will naturally arise. And then culture for me are things like beliefs, values. What are the things that we accept? And when I say we, what does the collective accept? What does the collective promote? And like, what are the things that, I'm not going to be specific about individuals, but what are things that our subgroups may exalt in a way, right? How do we reflect on our leaders? And though from a cultural perspective, leaders matter a lot in that regard because certain board members have heard me say this, but leadership behaviors influence culture. And so when I'm thinking about culture and wrapping back around to the kind of the beginning part of what I was hearing from a lot of my colleagues here, I was hearing leadership behaviors beginning to influence culture, right? It's why we're here, right? The board as leaders in this school district are responsible for expressing the specific behaviors that we want to see in our capacity, within our own capacity, and then looking for the professionals in the administrative space and inside the school buildings to be able to synergize that into something that is literal and then can become the climate. So those are just kind of the first things that come to mind for me specifically. A lot of depth, I think entirely too much time for me to have thought about these particular answer to this question. I think there's a vast amount of information. And so I will definitely look, to yield the time for anyone else who has any more comments, but I think I could start with that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams.
Surely.
My bad.
I find that first, climate is just, again, how you feel when you walk inside the building. How do you feel when you go to either other schools in the district? How do you feel when you walk in that building and you're about to go to your first class or something like that? Culture is just something different entirely, where how do you keep on doing that climate at the same time? What is the continuing force behind that climate? And I find that positive climate and culture looks like when I can walk in the school and I can see that not only am I getting the stuff I want to be done, I can see that not only my friends are having a good time getting that stuff done, but they are also being able to, how do I put this in words? I did not think about this question before, right?
That's okay. Gave you an essay question and it's on me.
But that's how I think about it. If they can get the stuff they want done in a quick and timely manner, That's what I think a very positive climate culture is like. I mean, that may be a very specific scenario and maybe just my own broad or my own specific view. But as long as you can get the stuff you want to get done in a manner that makes you feel welcome and safe.
I'm just going to check for understanding real quick, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Watts. What I'm hearing from you is that it's also the removal of barriers to positive climate culture. So if there are things that are disrupting climate culture, I mean, implicit in your comment there, I felt like if there are disruptions in a place that are stopping the flow of the effective completion of like your responsibilities or hanging out with your friends at lunch or whatever it is, that is also a detriment to climate culture. The flip side being, if you remove disruption, if you remove impediment to climate culture, then it promotes positive climate culture. Does that sound right to you? Great. Thank you so much. Dr. Watts.
So I'd agree with what everybody has said so far. So I'll add two things I think haven't been said, but are implicit in what everyone's saying. Number one is it's about relationships. So relationships are the foundation of how something feels, how a place feels, how your home feels, how your school feels, your workplace feels. And so in schools, it's kid-kid relationships, it's kid-adult relationships, and it's adult relationships. We've done a lot of work in schools on explicit strategies for promoting student behavior and climate, where if it's something that's implemented to change the kids' behavior, but the adults are not getting along, then that contradiction doesn't get us anywhere. So it's about, I think, a context of relationships that supports that feeling of I belong, I can get what I need to get done, because I can also get what I need here. And there are people who can see me and help me figure out what I need. So the second piece that's connected to this is walking our talk. As you said, Mr. Burdell Williams, the difference between climate and culture is about values, beliefs, mission, vision. Those can be things we put on a wall, we put in a positive behavior support set of expectations. Are we walking our talk? And are all of us walking our talk? And it's hard to change behavior. It's hard for us to change our own behavior, stop eating something I don't want to eat or exercise more or whatever I want to. But being able to walk our own talk, and that creates an environment of trust and safety, because I know what's going to happen here. And in a positive climate and culture, I know what's going to happen here is going to be reasonable, is going to be safe, is going to be based on what we need. So those are two elements I think are really, really critical.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. We have another question. Ms. Hesbacher. Culture is both tangible and intangible aspects of a place, a community. Climate influences the culture. I agree completely with Dr. Watts' perspective on relationships and respecting, prioritizing, and nurturing relationships. Thank you, Ms. Hesbacher. I'm also going to enter that into my notes here too. Ms. Blitzstein.
I first wanted to just say I really appreciate everyone's contributions, because I think that positive climate and culture, all of us sort of envision something slightly different, right? When we imagine walking into a school that has a positive climate and culture, but we all know it when we're there, because you feel it when you walk in. And so I just wanted to add two more sort of specific terms to culture. I totally agree that climate is really how a space feels when you walk in. And then culture feels to me more of the actions that contribute to that, and that are habits. And I think of habits as specific as greeters, like kids in a classroom who have been taught the expectation is when a guest comes into the classroom, someone is assigned to be the greeter. And that is also the norm, right? That those are the expectations in that classroom. And how does it feel to be a guest in that room where you're welcomed in that way? And how does it feel to be part of a group of people who welcomes people that way? So everyone has an active role in that, in the habits. And then that was the first word I just wanted to add. And the other word is norms, which I said. And so it's like, what is the accepted behavior? What has become the norm? And is that what we want? And is that contributing to positive climate? And or does it give us the opposite feeling and make us want to turn around and close the door behind us? So just thinking about specifics and how each person who is in that space has a role to play in contributing to the climate and the culture of a school.
Using my name again.
Oh, no, you're good. You're on. Thank you.
I think all of your points are very good and positive. What does positive climate and culture look like? You're talking about behavior. I think a lot of times that those interactions and those personal relationships, a lot of what perhaps many students encounter in their own lives as may not be positive. So that impacts everything a lot. And as far as a positive climate and culture, it would look like safety to me. Walking in the school and knowing that you feel safe in your school. Perhaps even consistency in accountability for not just administration but students as well. Because there may be students who have issues and but accountability for them is important, I believe, as well. To me, that's a positive climate and culture, even though it may not be a positive outcome for a student who may get in trouble. For the other 50% of the children who are doing well, that's a positive. That tells them that there's accountability. And many times that does not particularly happen. But so I think that that's a positive climate. That's what it looks like to me.
Thank you. We have a hand online, so I'm going to get that and then M. Robinson. Whenever you are unmuted, you are welcome to share your name and where you reside in the township. I believe you're good. Well, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Hi, it's Michelle Robinson, and I did
Hey.
not mean to raise my hand. I think I was looking to see if there was a chat, but I did want to, if I may, since I'm off mute now, I just wanted to talk about, I think someone recently just spoke about norms, and sometimes we need to think about, I love that, thinking about what our norms are, but I will also advance that to agreements. I think it's really important to determine whose norms are we valuing when we think about creating those norms. And so what we try to do is also think about, so that we have multiple perspectives and we sort of meet in the middle, is to think about what we agree to do so that everyone has agency and ownership over what we're agreeing to, how we agreeing to treat one another, and what we are deciding together our culture and climate will be.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Dr. Watts?
Something that you were saying was making me think, lack of action is an action. So it's part of a positive climate and culture is that things are noticed. People are noticed, behaviors are noticed. And it's not about micromanagement, but it is connecting to what Dr. Robinson just said, it is about having norms and agreements that people can rely on being enacted consistently. And when we don't respond to someone or something, the message is somehow that that's okay. And that is as much of a message as an active response. And so we have to look at what it is we respond to, who we respond to, and how, as well as what we're not responding to. We're not responding to.
Ms. Lohman.
Yeah, there's this famous quote from a US Supreme Court justice when asked to define pornography, which is, I know it when I see it. I sort of feel the same way a little bit about climate and culture. Sometimes you kind of just know it when you see it, when you feel it, when you're there. Like, I think of the schools that we visited, the high-tech high schools, and some of the board members were fortunate enough to go to visit some of these very high-performing schools in Southern California. And you go in there and you immediately know that things are going well in these buildings, and they are not typical school buildings. There are not classrooms. there's maybe studios, and there's lots of open space, and people are doing stuff on the floors in the hallway, and there's little nooks and crannies, and people, of course, it being Southern California, lots of people are outside, and there's, so it's, you just sort of, but that's the norm. Like, people know that is their expectation, which is, we trust you to go do these things that you need to get done. And so a little bit of it for me, I feel like it's hard for me to describe it because I feel it when I walk into a building. I felt it. People have heard me also talk about my trip to Germany and all the schools that I got to visit there. I felt it when I walked into certain schools in Germany. Like, the kids knew what the expectations were. They knew to trust the adults, and there was a fair amount of independence that given to these students. So I think, for me, that's the positive side then of sort of selling this a little bit, especially to older students, is the more we can trust you, the more independence and sort of freedom you have to do what it is that you want to do. The thing that I always worries me, or I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but about when we talk about climate and culture, is that it sometimes becomes really, how do we just get those kids out of our building conversation? Like, if we could just get rid of those kids, like if we could get rid of like those 3 kids, or if we could just get rid of those like 5 kids, or, those 6 boys over there, or those 3 girls, then everything would be great. Like, our climate would be so much better if we could just get rid of a certain group of students. And I want us to just be careful that we don't fall into that trap. Because obviously we are a public school system. We are sort of, like home, like they have to let you in when you show up at the door, kind of. And so it's hard. I just want to caution us not to start to create like groups of, well, if everything would be great if we could, just put all of those kids in an alternative ed placement that operates from 4 to 7, in the mods or something. Like, I want to make sure, because this district used to be that. We used to have alternative ed programs that were all Black boys. And I do not, as one partner, do not want us to see they're going in that direction. Again, like, that was not also productive. So I think we have to just be careful of that.
I will say to that point that when we talk about this, I did not do a good job I didn't include our vision and mission at the beginning here, and I should have, because it would have, did you bring it up?
Yeah,
Mr. Gradell. Mr.
Gradell
Williams is on it. We should be centering this conversation in our vision and our mission. And when I think about the 3 things that I'm going to think about centering this on: belong, engage, seek justice. And when we reframe these conversations and we do a litmus test for, is this action or is this approach the right approach for our district? I will be thinking about those three words. Does it increase belonging for everybody? Does it help students better engage in their academic experience and social experience in school? Does it help us seek justice for traditionally marginalized and underrepresented kids in our school? These are important questions, and they're important questions to make explicit as we move forward. Close, Mr. Burnell-Williams?
Absolutely. I just add one piece for me is that with it being called a vision statement, I think play back some previous board meetings since we created it. That's really been my perspective, right? It's what we would see. Like it's the vision. It's actually the vision. It's like not. I don't see this as like the aspiration necessarily. I see this as what I would see with my vision when I walked into a school building. I would see this happening in some way. I would see it maybe in the way that I interact with the student or a teacher, administrator, support staff, whomever. Like I see it when we're in the news. I see it when we're at a sporting event, or I see it when I'm at a social event for the school district. Like I would actually see the vision statement living in real time as a reflection of the climate. That's what I would see. That's so when I was thinking about this and trying to synergize my thoughts around it, Ross, thank you for mentioning it and for that frame. That's what came to mind for me. It's something that I want to see.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell-Williams. At this time, I see no additional comments and questions. And this being our last slide, I'll just offer some brief closing remarks. There will be many more ongoing and continuous conversations related to climate and culture. Engagement in building a climate and culture, positive climate and culture, is a continual process that requires focus and effort from every professional across our entire organization. The fact that we have this committee represents a commitment to that focus. And so I am looking forward to engaging in this work with our community members and with all of our board members moving forward. And with that, seeing, oh, there's an additional comment. Ms. Hesbacher, I'll read this into the record so that we have it. Culture needs to be a place where everyone belongs, where every student understands what is expected and what is their role and responsibility in that school community and what they can expect to happen when they aren't meeting their responsibilities. Thank you, Ms. Hesbacher. I'll make sure that gets included in our notes and reflected in our next meeting as well. The next meeting of the Climate and Culture Committee will be on October 27th at 7 p.m. here in the administration building and via Zoom. I will be reaching out to leadership of all of the parent organizations, SEEK, CAAA, UPG, our PTOs, to make sure that our leaders are aware that we are having these conversations and that this is a place where we can talk explicitly about what we want for climate and culture across our district. And with that, I will entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for being here.